Trump's Gaza Peace Plan may be welcome, but could it really bring peace? At its core, it's an ultimatum that would stop the Israeli onslaught, but not the occupation. So is there actual space for negotiation? And will Palestinians have any choice in shaping their future? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is the Gaza Peace Plan. Hamas negotiators, whom Israel tried to assassinate 3 weeks ago, are now studying a 20-point plan to end the war on Gaza. It's supposed to provide for an immediate end to Israel's assault, but it's far less clear what it means for the longer term. With Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu adamant that Palestinians will never have a state, is the agreement simply laying out terms for a return to occupation under a slightly different colonial structure? Here's a look at what's on the table.
Could Israel's war on Gaza be on the brink of ending? That's the hope of US President Donald Trump, announcing a 20-point Gaza peace plan during the Israeli Prime Minister's fourth visit to the White House. Speaking at a joint press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu standing beside him, the US President said they were beyond very close to a peace deal for the besieged Palestinian territory.
And again, we're not quite finished. We have to get Hamas, but I think they're going to be able to do this. So now it's time for Hamas to accept the terms of the plan that we've put forward.
The plan calls for an immediate end to the war if both sides agree, with extensive conditions placed on de-radicalizing and de-arming Gaza. Major hostage and prisoner exchanges would occur. Hamas would have to agree to playing no part in future governance, and Israel would have to commit to eventually leaving the enclave entirely after a suitable timeframe. Medical assistance and food aid would have unimpeded access into Gaza. But among the most striking conditions, a transitional authority, governed by an international committee of technocrats. It would oversee Gaza as it rebuilds, redevelops, and re-establishes infrastructure and peaceful governance.
To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works.
The US President would chair the body, but former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who praised the plan, has also been touted as having a senior role. For Palestinians, mention of Tony Blair is not popular. He's seen as a key player in the disastrous war in Iraq, a conflict that killed many under the premise of stopping weapons of mass destruction, which later proved not to exist.
This plan falls in US President Donald Trump and Israel's favor. They have interests in Gaza. They want to end Gaza in any way possible. There is gas in Gaza. They want to turn Gaza into Trump resorts. And Trump wants to finish his plan. And all these complications are from Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And if they wanted to solve the war, they would have solved it a long time ago.
The plan has been welcomed by many European and other nations within the UN as a real chance for peace. Peace that many countries believe has a new push, following last month's UN General Assembly, which saw a raft of nations formally recognising Palestinian statehood. But already, doubts are creeping in. Netanyahu re-emphasising that any Israeli appraisal of the plan will not include a two-state solution, and Israeli forces won't pull out. This is potentially the closest to ending the war since it began in October 7, 2023. But with Hamas yet to respond, Netanyahu already ruling out several conditions, the path to peace could still be a road to nowhere.
So will this plan lay a foundation for peace or more future conflict? Joining me now to debate that and more are from West Jerusalem, Director of the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, Jeff Halper, From Washington, human rights scholar and advocate Ayah Ziyadeh. And also from Washington, director of the Future of DHS project at the Atlantic Council, S Warrick. Thanks all so much for being with me. Ayah, as a Palestinian, is any of this good news? Does this proposal at least stop the killing and provide a fair path forward?
I think at the end of the day, the reality is that I'll know if it's good news when you know if it's good news. I think I'm at a point where, as many Palestinians are, won't believe anything until we see it. But I wouldn't say that it's a fair peace deal, a peace deal that continues to leave out Palestinians, that continues to evade accountability for the perpetrator, no end to apartheid, no reparations for the victim, no determination for Palestinians, just more colonial repression and Israeli impunity, guaranteed by the United States and its complicity. So a ceasefire is always good news, but unfortunately, Israel continues to do the exact opposite of what it promises. And so I'll believe it when I see it.
Jeff, are you on the same page there? Does that sound like a fair interpretation of what we've seen so far?
Absolutely fair. I think she's absolutely right. This is a replication of what Trump had said months ago, utter surrender. In other words, what they're really forcing Hamas to do is to save Gaza City, save the Palestinians in Gaza who are still being threatened. The peace proposal last night was a threat, it was an ultimatum to Hamas. It wasn't anything peaceful or whatever. And I think Hamas is really being confronted with either your people will be destroyed and Gaza will be destroyed, or you'll give back the hostages, and nothing is going to change politically. In other words, this is completely a ceasefire. It has nothing to do with a peace plan, certainly a wider Palestinian peace plan. And we have to remember that this is not simply a fight against Hamas. This is a part of the Palestinian struggle for self-determination. And if the world expects the Palestinians to give up their struggle for self-determination in order to save Gaza City, that's what I would call a devil's deal.
Okay, let me ask Tom, because parts of the plan have described the process of transition in which a temporary international administration would be put in place, with President Trump chairing a board of peace, and then former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, who was an architect of the Iraq War, overseeing the transition. I mean, do you see that working, and is that the best leadership to take this forward?
Well, yes, greetings to your other guests and to your viewers. It's certainly more complicated than what we've just heard. There are three things that need to happen. We don't know for sure what will happen on each of these three important points. First, what is going to be Hamas's reaction? If Hamas agrees, the process will go down one route, the hostages will be freed, and things will proceed smoothly. If not, the plan is for this international authority to take over the parts of Gaza where Hamas is not present, and an international stabilization force would come in, and then the Israeli army would leave. So we don't know what Hamas's reaction is. That will determine which of these two paths will be taken. The second step is, will Arab and other countries come forward with the troops needed to secure Gaza? I understand there have been serious commitments made by a number of Arab and Muslim countries, so there's actually hope that this will happen, but it needs to happen in a sufficient scale that would provide security for the people of Gaza. And then the third question is, will this international authority have the resources it's going to need to succeed? Right now, it looks as though they could be making the same mistake the Americans and British made going into Iraq in 2003, where they underestimated expert advice of what it was really going to take. And the result was chaos, corruption, and confusion. So if that can be solved, then yes, this could lead to a much better future for the Palestinian people, including, if there can be reform of the Palestinian Authority, an eventual Palestinian state.
Okay, Jeff, quickly, why were you shaking your head at the first part of Tom's answer?
Mainly because we're not picking up on the code. Reform of the Palestinian Authority, as if the Palestinian Authority is going to somehow take control of Gaza, means something. And Netanyahu said it last night in the White House. It means Palestinian acceptance of Israel as a Jewish state. It really means acceptance of the settlement project. The settlements all stay, which is a part of Trump's vision for peace that he proposed in 2020. It means the Palestinians give up their right to appeal to international law. They have to stop with the ICJ and the ICC. It means really the Palestinians have to give up their struggle for self-determination in order, and that's what reform means, in order to have any kind of governing role. But that simply leaves them in the role of collaborators. So we're asking the Palestinians to give up their struggle for self-determination in order that Israel can get its hostages back, basically.
Okay, and I see you agreeing there because, as you know, this plan talks about an eventual government of Palestinian technocrats, but who are they if Israel will refuse really, in essence, to work with the PLO or the Palestinian PLA itself?
Exactly. That's the question we're all asking. Who are these people? If the United States and Israel and the world stage continues to leave key Palestinians out of these conversations, all we're continuing to do is uplift Israel and what it wants. I think the real question we need to be asking and reflecting on is, why does the conversation continue to be framed around Israel's preferences at all? Why does Israel get a say in what this would look like? Why is the international community debating what Israel wants while Palestinians, the literal residents of Gaza, are excluded from the discussion? It's beyond insulting. Palestinians are more than capable of governing themselves. They're the only legitimate authority over their land. And handing Gaza over to foreign overseers like Blair or anybody else only reinforces the colonial logic that Palestinians are some savages, that they're merely subjects to be managed, and not a people with inherent rights to sovereignty. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be asking what Israel wants and who they're going to bring in regards to anything. Instead, we should be thinking about and discussing how we finally hold its entire government responsible and ensure that they are that Palestinians are granted the justice that they deserve and that they are brought to the table to discuss their sovereignty, to discuss who's going to govern them, which is themselves.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, that's the question many people are asking. How can you negotiate peace with only one party dictating terms? And that's, you know, Israel and the U.S. really considered one party. How does it's not a negotiation then?
Well, that's, first of all, they're not one party. They have some very different views. President Trump appears ready to block West Bank annexation, and he's certainly pushing Netanyahu to accept some things that are going to go down very hard in his coalition when he comes back to the Israeli capital for this cabinet meeting. We're all looking forward to seeing what happens. Look, October 7th changed everything. It set back the cause of Palestinian statehood by anywhere from 10 to 20 years. The problem right now, one of the problems, there are many obviously, is the Israeli public, not just the current Israeli government, will never accept a Palestinian state. And one of the realities of this situation is, although hundreds of countries, or more than 100 countries, have recognized the state of Palestine, there is one country that is both necessary and sufficient in order for there to actually be a viable Palestinian state, and that country is Israel. And there has never been a Palestinian strategy that has succeeded in persuading the Israeli public to agree that this is a good idea for Israel's security. What has happened since October, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, sorry, let me ask Jeff quickly, because I know you would argue that even, you know, well, as Tom was saying, this set back the prospect of a Palestinian state by 20 or 30 years. You must disagree there, because you believe there was never a prospect for a Palestinian state under the leadership that's been present in Israel. And you have often talked about the creation of Bantustans with what is actually left of Palestinian territory. So is this plan effectively paving the way for that?
Exactly. I mean, the whole presentation is wrong. This is not a conflict between two sides. This is a colonial situation. The very purpose of Zionism from 1897 until today is to Judaize Palestine, is to transform an Arab country into a Jewish country. This is its purpose. It has nothing to do with security. It's not a matter of annexation or non-annexation. The whole idea that Israel is going to give Judea and Samaria, as it's called, and Jerusalem to a Palestinian state is ridiculous. It's never been in the cards. It's an illusion. And it's simply forcing, Ayah's absolutely right. You're forcing a colonial situation on a colonized people and expecting them to accept that as somehow the colonizer has the moral high ground here. The colonizer can dictate. We have to worry about the colonizer's security and nothing about the right or the security of the colonized. It's a crazy kind of way of presenting this.
I imagine you agree there. So I'll ask you if you envision then any role for other Arab states to come in to try and renegotiate any more a realistic way of moving this forward so that it actually does lay out a feasible plan for Palestinians themselves with their participation included in negotiations and deciding what their destiny and future should be.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely a chance. Now, will the Trump administration and the Israeli government agree to any kind of renegotiation, or even if they do agree to a renegotiation, will they accept it? That's, I think, the real question, because realistically speaking, they haven't. None of these conversations started on October 7th. And even before that, the idea of a two-state solution, which the United States and its politicians continued to use in every single talking point, that's literally what it's been. It's been just a talking point. But I will tell you that among Palestinians, the prevailing consensus is toward a one-state reality, because Israel's policies have only consisted of creating a single apartheid system across the territory for nearly decades, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So whether renegotiations happen or not, the notion that Israel, while it's engaged in ethnic cleansing from Gaza to the West Bank, would suddenly offer Palestinians a genuine sovereign state is absolutely delusional. Even the idea of a two-state solution in this moment would be absolutely unfair, because what plot of land would Palestinians genuinely get when the Israeli government is currently working on pushing out the entire Palestinian population from Gaza into neighboring countries?
Okay, Tom, let me ask you then. I mean, a two-state solution.
Let me pick it up.
Okay,
No, but let me pick it up right there, because in the Trump 20-point plan that was announced yesterday, Israel agreed it would not annex Gaza and it would not displace Palestinians out of Gaza. So actually, that's not going to happen. What those two things Israel has committed to will actually come true. The question obviously is open on what will happen.
Why would
in the
they come
West Bank.
true?
Because Trump is going to be able to get...
What guarantees are there? What details? These are ideas, proposals in the air. There's nothing concrete. Israel is not withdrawing from Gaza. What you said is not true. Israel is redeploying inside Gaza. There's no timetable for any kind of renewal. I mean, you're just talking about proposals as if they're real things.
But I told you what the sequence of events is going to be. We will see what Hamas's answer is.
Who says it's going to be like that?
We will see what Hamas's answer is, and then we will see if Arab and Muslim and other countries will contribute peacekeeping troops to Gaza. And then you will see them deployed, and then you will see the Israeli army withdrawing from these areas. If you can't conceive of any possibility that this war will eventually end, then there's either just despair or give up completely. Many people are committed to the cause of a sustainable peace in the United States, Europe, and the Middle East. And the question is whether you give up on even trying. This agreement is, as President Trump said, the best available deal for both sides. I know it's not what Palestinians say they want. I know it's not what Israelis say they want. But if you want to end a war, as those of us who have been involved in helping end wars ranging from Bosnia to Southeast Asia to the
Tom, I
Middle
mean,
East, you have to take some chances and
we
make
have
this
to
work.
be realistic here, and that given the present government of Israel, many people believe there are far more nefarious goals at play here, in that looking as if they're laying out this 20-point plan, it's a straightforward peace agreement, at heart only sets up Hamas for failure, so that Israel can continue with its ultimate goal of annexing the West Bank, annexing Gaza. This is what Netanyahu and his government have said they ultimately want.
No, that's actually a too simplistic understanding. The Israeli government is a coalition of different political factions, just as the Palestinian body politic has different factions in it. And indeed, in Turkey and the United States and every other country, there are very different views. The question now is going to be, if this starts, then will it be carried into a successful outcome? You can go back through every war in history, from the Persians against the Greeks to the French against the Germans to the wars in the Balkans. Wars do eventually end. And the question is, on what terms? And is the peace sustainable? We have not had a world war in over 80 years. And we've had minor wars, but the major powers have not fought against each other in Europe or Asia in 80 years. So these things are possible. Eventually, there will be an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Will it happen in our lifetimes, or will our children?
It's not a conflict, and it's not a war. It's not a war. It's a
I have to say,
colonial
looking at this-
takeover of another people's country.
Well, I have to say,
You're
looking at the
completely
pictures of Gaza,
misrepresenting what this even is. It's not a war
But
between sides. The very fact that the Palestinians weren't even consulted makes lie to your idea that this is somehow sides, negotiations.
well, the
This is
international
a unilateral, brutal, militaristic takeover of someone else's country, and that's what you have to deal with.
I have to point out that the international mediators, Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, have been talking to Hamas. The criticism I thought you would make, which would be a very good one, is why is the United States, Qatar, and Egypt talking only to Hamas? Should they not have been discussing the future of Gaza with other people from Gaza and the West Bank, for that matter, who are not
Why
Hamas?
did they agree to this
That
in
would
the
be a fair
first place
question.
is a question. Right.
Let me get Ayah's take on that. Ayah, do you feel that too many Palestinians have been overlooked and Hamas has been given the singular ownership of this process?
I mean, legally speaking, Hamas is the governing agent of Gaza. They were elected by the Palestinian people of Gaza, meaning it would make sense right now for negotiations in terms of just Gaza as one Palestinian territory for them to be discussing and negotiating with Hamas. However, I find it interesting that you continue to put as if it all falls on Hamas, just like prior ceasefire negotiations. How many ceasefire deals were put forth and Hamas ended up accepting them? And Israel, after the United States would claim that they had accepted it, would pull out after Hamas accepted them. Why is that the case? To discuss this in a way that in order for peace to come, it is dependent on Hamas to agree to this peace proposal, is just unjust and unfair, especially considering the patterns. Just if we're talking about the last 2 years, it's Israel that kept violating ceasefire agreements. It's Israel that didn't want to put forth a peace plan or accept the initial plan that was put forth by the Biden administration. So to continue to bring in Hamas as if this whole entire situation ending is dependent on Hamas accepting the terms, I think is very unjust. But again, if anybody leaves with any peace, it should be that we shouldn't even be discussing a peace proposal with Israel, with the Israeli government, or the people that sit in the government. These people should be on trial for committing war crimes and committing genocide. They should get no say in how Palestinians get to govern themselves or how the war on Gaza and the genocide in Gaza ends. They are perpetrators of genocide, and the United States is complicit in enabling this continued genocide. Netanyahu shouldn't even be accepted on United States lands. He should be arrested upon landing, and instead he's arrived here multiple times and had conversations multiple times while the rest of the global stage continues to hold the Israeli government accountable and try to put through measures that show the Israeli government that you cannot continue doing this carte blanche while the United States continues to do the opposite. So
Okay.
if this does not work, it's because of the United States and Israel, not because of the Palestinian people.
Ayah, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists sincerely so much for being with us, and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.